I have a brief introduction. Kevin, you're the CEO of Guideline. Kevin, Guideline provides 401k plans in an innovative new way, online, and therefore reduce the costs of employees have when you do it the traditional way. Before Guideline, he spent 7 years, I believe, building TaskRabbit. Has anybody used TaskRabbit? Yeah, we were talking about lunch. Yeah,
it transformed my life.
Yeah, look it up. I hadn't, but I had lunch with Danielle, so I looked it up.
Perfect.
TaskRabbit looks pretty cool. I didn't have a chance to do it because I was a little busy. It's a cool way to get your ordinary tasks done. Stuff you have to do around the house, the yard, you just get somebody else to do it. So essentially.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So thank you, Kevin, for coming. It's great that you came all the way out. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Danielle is responsible for overseeing the aspects of patient services at Grand Rounds. Quite frankly, she also played a key role in their site decision. I know she was traveling up and down the East Coast and around the state of Maine in that decision. Grand Rounds started in 2011. They provide an employer-based solution that gives employees the technology and information to help make decisions we all have to make in our lives about healthcare. So essentially, employees of the companies that buy their service have another source of medical information to talk to about referrals and second opinions. And if I may, she mentioned something at lunch today about 9 billion data point, million, some crazy number of data points that they know the best doctors in the country, and they can put you in touch with them. So it's a very innovative and creative way, and thank you, Danielle, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get right into this. I'd like to first ask you each to briefly tell a little bit more about the company and more importantly, how it came to be, what was the spark, what was the innovation that led to it, and Kevin, if you don't mind.
Sure. So essentially we are a retirement platform. Our first product is the 401k offering for small businesses. But really the precipice of the company came out of my pain at founding TaskRabbit, who is where I met Mike and Jeremy, my co-founder, who are both here. Really wanting to offer the best 401k possible for our employees. We were very employee-centric. The culture of the company was very transparent. And I didn't find and couldn't find the 401k that I wanted to offer my employees. So we went down that path. And I am technically, I'm a systems engineer, now acting as a CEO. And eventually I was just at the point where TaskRabbit was in an operating mode, doing a ton of revenue, no longer really building a product, and that's what I'm good at. And this problem kept surfacing and sort of smacking me in the face. And I just set out and I was like, I can build this. I'll build what I wanted to. I talked to Mike and Jeremy about it, and we set off maybe 2 years ago, started building the core technology actually here in Lewiston. At the time we didn't have office space, but it's mostly Mike and myself working remotely with some help from Jeremy for the design. But that's really sort of the spark of it, was really around the problem. We weren't just going to build something, we wanted something that was impactful and sort of had purpose. And that's sort of how I've looked at things throughout my career, is really trying to solve the problem rather than trying to find one. The problem sort of presents itself, and then you can architect and build around that.
So like all great inventors, I mean, the world was dark before
Right.
Thomas Edison said,
Sure.
hey, let's make a light bulb, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's great. And Danielle, tell us about the formation of the idea behind Grand Rounds.
Sure. Well, I wish, like Kevin, I could claim it was my idea. But our company was founded by Dr. Rusty Hoffman. He is the Chief of Interventional Radiology at Stanford Medical Center. And it was a very personal story that led him to the founding of the company, where his son Grady had become very ill. And the treatment that Stanford needed to provide, frankly, just wasn't well known in terms of the best way to give Grady a great health outcome. Fortunately, because of his position as the chief of interventional radiology, he was able to call around his colleagues and find a researcher at the University of Washington who had some unpublished research that he had just completed regarding Grady's condition and a way to treat that. And so they were able to take the information from that physician, bring it to Stanford, and get Grady the treatment that he needs. Grady's doing wonderful today. He comes into the office to visit us, which is great. But it really made Rusty realize that he was in a really fortunate position, being a medical insider, to have access to that information, and how unfair it was to the rest of the world who don't have that type of medical insider and advice to help them through difficult medical situations. And so that was the genesis of founding the company. Rusty then connected with our CEO, Owen Tripp, to help him take that idea and make a business of it. I was excited when they got their first round of funding, and Owen called me to say, "Hey Danielle, I have a really interesting problem that I think you would be interested in, because like Kevin, I'm very motivated by problem solving, seeing what the problems are that are out there and looking for a great solution, and have been thrilled to be part of the team that's working to make better healthcare for people over the last 3 years."
So in both cases, it was solving a very personal problem. Or in your case, Kevin, it was to help your employees, and this wasn't working for you, so you went out and did it. So, and the same in the case with Grand Rounds. So there's a motivation for that creativity and innovation. So do you do anything in your companies to inspire that in your staff, or in new products and new ideas? This is one I threw at you. I didn't give you this one ahead of time. What do you do to inspire employees about creativity and innovation? Or how do you encourage that? I mean, is it space? Is it ideas? Is it taking them for a beer? What do you do?
Yeah, for us at Guideline, it's really about having an open culture and a transparent culture. Even when I do board decks, they're not private. If I have a board meeting, I'll come back and I'll share the board deck with the team. And I think that sort of just builds a level of trust and transparency, and no idea is a bad idea, so to speak. We also have stand-ups every Monday morning where I'll solicit feedback. It's pretty much dead silent most of the time, but as long as you keep doing it.
What is a stand-up?
Oh, sorry. A stand-up is sort of an all-hands company meeting, but it's essentially structured as such that we have essentially, so we're 24 people now, in a little over a year of being live, where we all meet. It's 10 a.m. Monday morning. We all get together. We do the remote. We have a couple of remote workers, including Mike, where we sort of just share how the business is going. And I'll do a quick, maybe 3 to 4 minute update on the business. I'll tell them what I'm working on, what's the one thing this week that I'm focused on completing, and then where I need help. And I think that's really an important part of it, is to ask, I could really use your help with this. It's normally Jeremy with design or something like that. I think it's important that your team feels that they're part of the overall sort of movement forward and what they can do to assist. And I ask each of our team leaders to come with the one problem that they're trying to solve and push forward and sort of complete for that week. So that's called a stand-up. You typically are standing up. The idea is to keep the meeting short and effective. Sometimes, there's bean bags and like the whole cliche, but that happens. You can't. It's hard to avoid. I've tried to avoid it. It's really hard. But yeah, that's sort of the idea.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So you'll see this theme. We're say West Coast companies,
West
right?
Coast.
So we do stand-ups too. We do them, at a team level nearly every day. Each of the managers kind of will stand up with their team for 15 minutes to kind of hear their issues and work on unblocking them. I think one of the other things that we do, though, is our space is really important to us, the way that the workspace is designed, making sure that we have a really open, collaborative kind of space so you can turn and talk to the person next to you and share an idea and bounce ideas around with one another. We try to create pods, like little lounge areas where you can go and be a little less structured in the way that you're working. And I think that just helps people to be a little more creative and feel a little more comfortable. And as Kevin says, transparency is super important. Likewise, we make most of our presentations fully available to every member of the company. Our CEO stands up once a month and shares what's going on, as do a number of members of executive staff. And building that trust is a really important aspect, I think, of making your employees feel comfortable sharing so that you can continue to innovate and you can continue to improve and move the company forward. Without that trust, they're just not going to do that.
One of the other phrases I like to say about what we're trying to do here is about people, place, and prosperity, and place leads to prosperity. So that's great. Thank you. Let me ask you a little bit about your team's decision and the creative role to make the expansion to Lewiston, and a bit about how that decision came about. I mean, I told my end of the story. You could say I was wrong. You could add to it. A little bit about how you came to be here in Lewiston, what your plans are for Lewiston. Mike?
Sure. So mine is a little bit personal, I guess. TaskRabbit acquired a company called SkillSlate that Mike was the previous CTO at. Mike, Jeremy, and I had worked together for almost 5 years. I've never found co-founders that I've worked so well with, and we can move exceptionally fast. We're sort of are on the same wavelength, and we're very honest, like brutally honest, like almost I don't know, abusive, I would say. If anybody else sort of sees how we work together, it doesn't look healthy, but we've been together for 5 years. It's healthy, I would say, and we're really effective. But I would say Mike grew up here, lives here in Auburn, and we wanted to start a company together, and that's okay with me. So we tried it out. He worked remotely at TaskRabbit. It worked well. He's an amazing engineer, one of the best engineers I've ever worked with, and sort of that was the precipice for it. I also have roots here. My folks are from my father's Canadian. Grew up in Moosehead Lake region. So I love Maine. I love the East Coast. I spent the majority of my adult life in Boston. So I'm not from California. I'm one of those transplants. I head west. So I love the people here. And I think when Mike told me that we could get office space down here relatively cheaply, it was sort of a no-brainer for us. And we're actually committed to building our support out here. As well with some engineering, if we can find the talent. So I think you're helping us with that. So we're hiring support managers.
Spread the word.
Here on Lisbon Street.
Yeah.
But that was sort of I guess how it all started.
Sure.
Was really around Mike, and then Lewiston being so supportive and helping us along that path.
Well, thank you. And I know, as I said, it's about networks and meeting people and knowing connections. And Danielle, I know you have a personal connection here as well. But how did Grand Rounds end up here?
Sure. So even before Grand Rounds knew that we wanted to have an East Coast Center of Operations, so I grew up here in Lewiston, and my parents sent me a newspaper article about what Tom Platz was doing in Mill 5, and I thought, that's really interesting. So I was visiting them one weekend, and I was like, hey, Dad, can you call Tom and ask him if I can go over and talk to him about this project? It sounds really interesting. So I went over and met with Tom and heard about what was going on, and it sounded super interesting, and I was like, okay, I want to keep talking. A few months later, I started talking to our CEO because roughly 2/3 of our patients that we support are on the East Coast, and supporting them from the West Coast was becoming increasingly challenging as we grew, and so we decided to start searching out East Coast operations. So hence I was able to strike up the conversation with Tom again. However, just the fact that I grew up in Lewiston and wanted to move back does not satisfy the CEO or the board. So that is where, really two organizations were very helpful to us in being able to make the decision to come here, working first with Maine & Company as well, who then also helped us connect with John. and putting specific data together for this area. This talent was definitely, frankly, a concern because this is a smaller region than a lot of the other locations that we were looking at on the East Coast. Frankly, the community does have some challenges compared to some other places that are more, I think, natural for companies not from here to look at, particularly in education level. And so that was a bit of a concern for us. But frankly, that was an area where the Growth Council was able to help us out, both in terms of, sharing the data as it exists today, but then helping to demonstrate the resources that were in place to help us find the talent that we needed, as well as the organizations that were starting to work towards, helping to advance those things in the community. So knowing that there was a long-term plan that we could also become involved in to help advance the community.
Thank you. So let me just get a bit personal and ask you to share some personal thoughts on creativity and innovation for entrepreneurs. What is inside you that has that spark of innovation? You talked about why the company came about, but what is it about yourself, or what challenges or fears did you have to overcome to make that entrepreneurial leap? Or perhaps maybe there was someone that helped you or guided you in that way. And that will help us, instruct us on how we develop mentors and things for what we're trying to do here. Danielle?
Well, for me, going to Grand Rounds, I will say the biggest fear is that I was not from the healthcare industry, and so it was scary taking on a challenge that was in an industry that I knew nothing about. But that's where I think mentorship is a really important element of that, and relationships and having community support behind you, because it really does then help to bounce ideas around with people, and having a group of people who are willing to openly talk about issues and aren't hoarding information and really just want to help each other succeed is really helpful, and frankly is something about the Lewiston Auburn community that was one of the decisive factors for Grand Rounds and coming here was really the sense of community here, and how everyone really is very welcoming and wants us to succeed and is very helpful in helping us find the resources that we need here. But I would just say really it's about the people that you surround yourself with.
And what challenges or what was the drive for you?
Yeah, that's personal, I guess. I'm a really picky person. I'm really demanding. I'm sure Mike and Jeremy can tell you. And I always feel like things could be better. Mm-hmm. And I like to build things, and I like to be part of creation. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's never. I'm not really a person to settle, I guess, much. So I think just having that sort of perspective that things could be better and you can push something forward is what drives me to do it. Mm-hmm. I've been entrepreneurial since I was in high school. I grew up, a military family. My father was a butcher, and he joined the military. And then he worked his way all the way, up to Army intelligence and top secret clearance and all of that sort of stuff. And I think having seen that happen, high school educated, really pushed his way through. Just knowing that it's possible, I think was a big influence on me. And sort of having the freedom to do that. I think now I'm a father of two very young kids, and I'm starting to see how helicopter parenting can be constructive and destructive. Having that sort of sense of freedom to go out and to create and to be sort of free to do sort of what you want, I think is really important.
Great, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Thank you. So look, it's about 6:45. I want to have a chance for any comments or questions about, maybe not as personal as I just got with Kevin, but Kevin or Danielle, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask about what they've done or what they're trying to do, or how we can take what you've heard here tonight about doing more entrepreneurship and business development here in this community?
Based on your experience so far, give us some feedback on what we need to do to make this a better community for companies like yours to locate here.
Yeah, for me, For us, in Mike's team in particular, we essentially have open-ended headcount for engineering, being very selective in the skills that are taught. You don't have to have a CS degree. It's nothing that needs to be completely formalized. I would say boot camps, engineering boot camps, if you can push those forward, those are really, really important. Being selective in what you're taught, the skill set, being very specific for today's workforce. This might get like too technical, but don't teach Java and COBOL and all that sort of stuff. Teach something that people are using now, and making sure that it's open. Some of the best engineers I've ever worked with were English majors and have English degrees. So don't pigeonhole yourself. If you want to change careers and get into software engineering, I would say there's resources out there. You can try it. You may just excel at it. We hired essentially a compliance person that had worked for me at TaskRabbit as a software engineer maybe 6 months ago, and he's one of our best engineers. Taught with Mike taught him, brought him along. I think that's really important. So I would just say if you can be specific in the skill sets, and we'd be glad to help you with that in what's being taught in the community. I think that would be super helpful to us on the engineering side. I think on the customer service side, just really there's no central place for us to go and find talent. I know that sounds like it should just be online and it's dice.com and Craigslist, but having sort of a vetted pool of individuals would be really great that are looking for new careers or have certain experiences. That would be really helpful for us.
And I would say, I think that continuing on kind of the public-private partnerships is important. So another thing that was really helpful for Grand Rounds deciding to come here. So talent is, I think, the number one thing that everyone's going to worry about. You need the right workers to do your jobs. And it was really helpful that we were able, for instance, to get in touch with and, sit down with some of the leadership at TD Bank for an hour and talk about how they do recruiting and the kinds of people that they're finding. It was really helpful that we could sit down with Central Maine Community College and talk with them about the kinds of programs that we would be interested in recruiting people from and coursework that we would be interested in seeing them develop. And I think continuing to do that, with colleges like Kaplan University and CMCC, is just a really important thing for employers because we need to make sure that we don't just have the talent that we need for today, but we're thinking about the skills that are going to be needed for the future, and we're starting to train people for that now.
Anybody else want? We have maybe one more question, one or two more. Yeah.
Hi there. Thank you so much for being here. It's really wonderful to hear your stories and hear about the evolution of your businesses and your decisions to be here. Very insightful. I'm pardon my maybe lack of familiarity with your position in sort of the business spectrum, but I just wondered, to what extent are you marketing your business and your services business to business versus business to consumer? Because I'm always curious about businesses that locate in somewhat less than major metropolitan areas and how they see themselves relative to a consumer base that they may not be marketing to directly. So I'd love to know a little bit about that from both of you. Thanks.
I'll go first.
Sure. So for us, I'd say we primarily work with large self-insured employers, and so frankly, there aren't that many of those in Maine, so it wasn't a primary selection criteria for us. Now, that said, we do have, there's a number of people that we support in Maine. Some of our customers are, some locally would be like Lowe's, who else? Target. Not too far away. So, we have employees of theirs that we support that live in this community, but it certainly wasn't a, kind of primary selection criteria for us.
Yeah, for us being sort of the online platform, something that's a little unique about the 401k space or retirement planning in particular for SMBs. It's really what we call a B2B2C company. So we have to sell to the business, but our end goal is really the retirement sort of success of the end consumer, the participant. So for us, we do a lot of channel deals. So we work with payroll companies. Payroll drives probably 80% of our business. We do direct sales as well. Rosanna's here. She runs our direct sales for the US. And I think for us, the focus is really about being efficient and self-service. So we don't do a lot of marketing. Most of what we do is really about word of mouth, participants taking it to their companies. And that's sort of our end goal is really that, right? Like if we have the best product and the best 401k or retirement plan, they're going to bring it to their business. And that's really how we're structuring things. We've raised $10 million to date. Most of that money is being spent on engineering and product. We'll do some marketing, mostly test marketing next year. But really for us, it's channel partnerships, payroll companies, banks, et cetera, that may have those services already integrated. Do a lot of distribution as well. It's sort of the idea, anybody selling to an SMB we can co-sell with to bring sort of stuff, our retirement product with whatever solution they're selling as well.
Thank you. Okay, if no one's screaming to say something, I'm very diligent about time, so I like to get things on time and off on time, but we'll have a few minutes afterwards to mingle perhaps, get some more questions and answers. Thank you both so much.
Great.
I have a book about Maine and Down East that I'd like you both to have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Growth Council. Welcome to Maine. Welcome back to Maine, I should say.